Okay friends, it's time to get started on replacing our window regulator assembly. To do this, we're going to have to gain access by removing the inside door panel. To start taking the door panel off, we're going to make our way right over to the mirror switch. To remove the mirror switch, I'm going to use a plastic trim tool so I don't damage the paneling here. You can also carefully use a pocket screwdriver if you can't get in between the two areas. Now, as I press down in the center here, there's going to be a tab located behind this area, holding it in. So I'm just going to carefully press it down towards the switch and gently twist. While I start pulling it away, there's also another tab on this side, closer to the window. Now for this one, generally all I do is I carefully put my finger in here and then I'll run mine down along the side. As I start putting my trim tool in along the side here, I'm pressing on that tab and I can carefully pull this out and away from the door panel. Now once you pull it out of there, you're going to want to have a look at the back side. You're going to find that you have a wiring harness that leads to the switch. On one side, you're going to have a locking tab. To remove that, you can either use your trim tool or that small pocket screwdriver. I'll carefully get in between the wiring harness and the switch itself, gently pry just far enough to pull it out. Now once I have it out of there, I always like to give electrical components a quick inspection. If you see any funny colors inside where the connector is, generally that's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. Ours looks fine, so I'll go ahead and set this aside. I'll carefully push this inside the door panel, and now we can move along to where the window switches are located. To remove the window switch, I'm going to carefully get underneath this area right here with my plastic trim tool. I can feel that there's a little ridge that I can carefully get in between. I'm going to gently pry and start pulling this up a little bit as I do. Let's have a look from the back side. Now on the back side, you can see that you have 3 electrical connectors. We're going to start disconnecting these. For the green, you can see that there's a tab right here along this area. I'm going to use my pocket screwdriver and I'm going to carefully try pressing on this. You can also try to use your fingers or even some pliers if for some reason your fingers aren't strong enough. Always give it that close inspection. Looks fine. We'll continue on to the blue in the center here. There's a tab right along the side. We'll go ahead and press on that and gently pull this out as well. This one's a little bit harder to get to. It's down along the side right here. Just going to carefully get in between here. Gently pry, lift it up and out. Okay, now I have everything disconnected. I'll have a look at the back side of my switch to make sure it looks fine and set it aside. Now let's move along to this area. Behind your black handle, you're going to find a rectangular panel. I'm going to carefully use a pocket screwdriver, get in between this area without damaging anything, and gently pry. We'll go ahead and pull it right off of there, and you can have a look at the back side. There's going to be 4 locking tabs that hold it in place. Make sure they're still good and set that aside. Now behind that panel, you're going to find that you have 2 7mm headed bolts. We're going to remove the pair. There's one of our screws. Do the same to the other. Now that we have those 2 screws off, let's move along to this area. This is the inside door handle. We want to carefully remove the trim panel that goes behind the handle. I'll use my pocket screwdriver, gently get in between this area without damaging the door panel in any way. I'm going to gently pry as I make my way around until it pops free. Once you have it broken free, go ahead and pull on that handle and remove this from the door panel. We'll give it a quick inspection and set it aside. Now let's move down along the bottom of the door panel. You're going to find 2 5.5mm mounting screws. Now we can move along to removing the door panel from the door. To do this, I'm going to use a plastic trim tool. And essentially, I want to get in between the panel and the door itself and gently start prying it away. Now behind the door panel, you're going to have several clips that look like this. It's common for them to pop out of place, and that's okay, because once we have it apart, we can carefully put them all back into place. Now once you have it mostly broken free, we're going to carefully grab onto the door panel and we're going to gently lift it up. Just be very careful for any pinch points. I don't want you to hurt your fingers in any way. There's our door panel. Go ahead and set that aside. All right, with the door panel out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our inside door handle. We're going to carefully start removing some of the insulation that's located around it. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make my way down along here, and there's going to be some sticky tape that I'm going to carefully start pulling away. I want to reuse it, so I don't want to tear it into a whole bunch of pieces. Now once I have that pulled away, I'm going to continue on to the foam insulator. Now behind all that, you're going to find that you have two Phillips head screws. There's one down in the lower corner and one directly diagonal across from it. Let's remove the pair. Let's grab onto that door handle. We're going to give it a little wiggle and start separating it from the door itself. Now, as we start pulling this away from the door, keep in mind that you will have a rod that leads to the back of this that we will have to disconnect. So, of course, it won't just fall right out of there. You want to pay attention to the way that the rod comes up, curves two ways here. All we want to do is gently pull the handle away far enough that we can take this and gently twist the handle as needed to remove it. There it is, friends. With that out of the way, let's continue on to removing the inside vapor barrier. That's this area right here. As we start removing this, you want to be very careful not to tear it because we will be reusing it. Let's move over to this area where the wiring connects onto the door. I'm going to use my trim tool and carefully try to remove it. There we go. Just going to go ahead and pull my wiring out through here. There we go. Now the next thing that we're going to want to do for the window regulator is to make sure you reconnect in your window switch. If you were to look at this, you can tell that I have the green where the door locks was, the blue in the center, and then the gray down all the way at the bottom. Go ahead and put the key in the on position. You don't need to run the vehicle, but we do need to be able to put the window down. Looking up here at the window, you can see exactly how far I put it down, approximately 3 finger widths. Now if we make our way down to this area, you can see a large hole. If you were to look inside of here, you can see where the window regulator is and where it connects onto the window. There's going to be 2 rivets that hold the window to the regulator, one in this hole here, and then if you were to move straight on over, inside of this hole, you're going to find a second one. Now this one over here is a lot easier to see, so it's going to be the one that I show you. The process for the other one is going to be the exact same thing. The easiest way to get these rivets out of here is with some sort of cutting tool or even a drill with a sharp drill bit. I'm going to use a drill with a sharp drill bit, start drilling out this rivet. Once I get this one freed up, I'll do the same to the other one. Before we continue on by removing the window from the regulator, keep in mind, the window is made of glass, it's extremely fragile, and if it did happen to break, it could potentially get in your eyes or your face or even hurt you in some way. So be extremely careful. Let's get ready to continue. I'm going to put this right on the head of the rivet, and all I want to do is try to drill off the head here. Once we get that off, we'll punch out the rest. It's important to try to stay centered on this. It's easy to go off to the side, in which case you're going to have a difficult time. Now, it is common to have to use a cutting wheel of some sort. There isn't very much room inside of the door here, so when you do, you're going to have to use a wheel that's pretty much worn down. At this point, typically I would just go ahead and replace a wheel like this, but it's perfect for in-the-door situations like we have here. Now, once I have the head of it cut off of there, I'm just going to continue on with a hammer and punch. I just want to try to drive this out of here. Keep in mind, it is attached to glass, so the more bonking you do, the more potential for damage. Okay, so there's that one. As you can tell, it came right out of there. This looks perfect. I made no damage to the glass of the window, and even the window regulator looks fine. The window regulator I'm not so worried about because obviously we're replacing it. The glass is the part that worries me the most. Now with this one out of here, I'm going to continue on doing the exact same thing on the other side. As I said before, it's going to be a little bit harder to get to, but we should be able to access it. Now we're going to move along to this side right here. You can continue on with your drill and a sharp drill bit right through this hole. If that doesn't work for you and you want to use a cutting wheel, you're going to have to go ahead and remove this area right here. We'll go ahead and take the speaker out of this, and then we'll be able to gain access through the speaker hole. To get the speaker off of here, we're going to continue by removing 3 6mm headed screws. Right where my thumb is, there's a little squeeze tab. I'm going to squeeze on that and we'll separate this. We'll give that a close inspection, make sure there's no corrosion, give our speaker a quick inspection as well, and set it aside, making sure that we cause no damage. Keep in mind, this is a magnet. You don't want to put it on another magnetic surface, and you also need to make sure that you're careful for any screws or metal surfaces that you might happen to have around. Let's go ahead and pull this off of here as well. All right, there's rivet number 2. All right, so once we have the window broken free from the window regulator, we're going to carefully grab onto it. I'm going to slide it up into the fully upright position, and then I'm going to continue on with some tape. You can either use tape or even suction cups, whatever you happen to have, but we need to make sure that this stays up. If you're using tape, use a lot of it. Tape costs a lot less than new glass. The next thing we want to do is put the key in the on position. What we want to do is have a peek inside of the door right here. We want to make sure that the window regulator is in the fully compressed position. So essentially both these straight arms that come across are as close as possible. After that, we'll go ahead and take the key out of the on position, remove it from the vehicle, and then we can continue. Keep your fingers away from this area while you do so. Now what I did is I went ahead and I took the switch back off. I tucked the wires up and inside the door so they'll be safe. I'm going to continue on by removing 3 more rivets. You'll find one here, down below it, and then one right there. We're going to have to go ahead and cut each one of these out, and then we can continue. Now we'll just continue pushing out the rest of these rivets. This one already kind of came out. Go ahead and push that. Use my hammer on this one. With those rivets out of there, let's continue on to our 3 11mm mounting nuts. Now, as I'm removing this last one, I want to keep in mind, this is pretty much the last thing holding the window regulator into the door. So, you want to be very careful. If you're holding your hand inside here to hold this, just keep in mind it could be a little heavy, and I don't want you to get into any pinch points. Now I'm just going to go ahead and reach inside here where the speaker is, or was. Now that we have all the mounting nuts off of there, let's carefully reach inside here. We're going to hold on to the window regulator and slowly start pulling it away from the door. We're going to rest it down inside the door, and then we're going to continue on over here to the wiring. Now let's gain access to that by getting this tape out of the way. Right here you can see that there's a little tab that I'm just going to gently pry up on. Once I get it pried up, I'm going to try to separate the wiring. Let's carefully reach inside here, being very aware of any pinch points. There it is, friends. Okay, friends, now it's time to install our brand new window regulator assembly. Let's take this and we're going to start carefully sliding it in. Once we do, what I want to try to do here is to line up this mounting stud with its corresponding hole. Once it's kind of sitting in there a little bit, we can continue on by lining up our rivet holes, and then at that point you'd either continue with rivets or even brand new nuts and bolts. It's your prerogative. All right, so now that I have that nut on there, I'm going to continue on with a bolt and a washer. I'm going to come in from the inside here, and what I want to try to do is line up my window regulator with the door. I'll just wiggle this around until it lines up, slide my bolts right on through. Start a nut on there to hold it in place. Now we'll continue on to the other two. Now I'm going to continue on holding the backside with a wrench. I'll come out here with a 10mm to tighten each of the nuts. We'll tighten our 11mm nut as well. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you grab onto your inside door handle rod. I'm going to bring this up and put it in the closest position to where it needs to be before I can continue with anything else. Now once that's up there, we'll continue on with the rod that's on the window regulator that has the two mounting studs coming out of it. We'll go ahead and line those up with their corresponding holes, slide them right on through, and apply our mounting nuts. Go ahead and tighten those up with your 11 millimeter. Make sure that's nice and snug. Now what I'm doing is I'm reaching inside and I'm trying to find the wiring for the window motor. We're going to take this and we're going to bring it right down through the door and out through this hole down here. Now once it's out and through, you want to make sure that you have it in the proper positioning. Looking at this, you can see that I have a flat area up along the top. It also has the locating nub that locks into this area. Slide it in, listen for a click. There that is. Double check it, make sure it's completely secured. If you feel as though you wanted to retape it, you can, but as long as it's secured, you shouldn't have to. Now the next thing we want to do is make sure that all of the wiring is outside of the door. We're going to have to reconnect the window switches here. Once you have that reconnected, we're going to also make sure that this rod right here is up and through the hole where the inside door handle was. You want to make sure nothing gets bound up inside this once we start bringing the window regulator up. Okay, fingers clear, everything's clear from inside the door. We'll continue bringing up the window regulator until we're lined up to our mounting points. Essentially bring it right up to each of these holes, and then we'll move along to carefully bringing the window down to line everything up. Okay, I'm going to pause on the switch. Nothing's touching the switch. I'll carefully reach inside. I want to bring this over and make sure it does line up with my corresponding holes. That looks perfect. I'm going to take the key out of the on position. Now we can start removing all of our tape. Keep in mind, as you remove the tape, you do not want the window to come falling down. Now what I'm going to do is try to safely lower the window down. I want to try to keep it inside the window channel, but what we need to do is carefully bring it down till it lines up with the window regulator, making sure to keep our fingers away from any pinch points. Now once you have that lined up, continue on with some rivets or some mounting bolts. I'm going to use a bolt with a washer from the back side here and slide it right on through the window and in and through the window regulator. Once I have that on there, I'll continue on with a mounting nut. Now that I have this one started, I'm confident that I don't have to worry about the window falling down on me. I'll continue on to the other side. My nut on there. Once you have them both started, go ahead and hold that bolt still and tighten each of the nuts. Make sure that's nice and tight. You don't want your window rattling around on you while you're driving down the road. Okay, so once you have the window mounted to the window regulator, we're going to want to test this. But before you go ahead and put the key in the on position, make sure there's nothing inside the door that could potentially get caught on something, such as a flashlight or anything the like. Also, you want to make sure you have the rod up and into this position so it's sitting out here. We don't want anything to get caught inside that brand new window regulator. After all that, go ahead and put the key in the on position. We're going to bring the window down as far as we can go and make sure it goes up to the fully right position. Perfect. Now, once you've tested it and you're sure it functions properly, let's continue on by removing the key from the on position and removing the window switch again. After that, we're going to start reapplying the weather barrier across this area so we can continue on to the speaker reinstallation. We'll just gently set this here for now. We'll continue on with this in a minute. We're going to take this and we'll slide it into the proper position. Looking at the back side, you're going to see that you have the locating tabs that need to line up with the door. We'll go ahead and line those up, slide them in, listen for a click. There's that. Give it a little wiggle. That feels good enough. The holes look like they're lined up, so we should be able to continue on with our speaker. Now we can take that speaker, we're going to connect it in. Listen for a little click there. At this point, you just want to go ahead and line up your 3 mounting bolt holes. We'll start in each of the mounting bolts before we go ahead and tighten any of them. Leave that nice and loose. Now that they're started, snug them up. Now we can bring this over and we're going to try to line it up with its original position. You want to make sure you have all of the mounting holes lined up. Now I'm going to go ahead and hold onto the rod like this. We're going to take the inside door handle and hold it in the down position, just like this. We'll slide it on here. As it goes on, we're going to bring it right down, and it should look like this by the time we get it latched in. There we are. Now we have this area right here that we want to pay attention to. So what I want to do is I'm just going to put it inside the door. Let's go ahead and get it lined up. Slide it in up against the door as far as possible, and then lock it in. Give it a little wiggle to make sure it's semi-secured, and then we'll continue on with each of our mounting screws. One of those mounting screws goes up inside the top corner here. We'll go ahead and put that in. I'm going to leave that loose until I continue on with the other one. Once they're both started, snug them up. Now I'm going to tuck this inside here. For good measure, I'll just go ahead and remove whatever foam's left on here. Now we can set this down into that position. At this point, we're getting ready to go ahead and put the door panel back on. But while we were removing it, I had mentioned that there are a whole bunch of push tabs that could potentially get stuck in the door or even fall out. Either way, if there's some inside the door, you need to use a trim tool and go ahead and remove them. Once you have all of them out, we'll go ahead and place them into the door panel before we install the door panel on the door. Once you have all of the push clips out of the door, continue on by inserting them into the door panel. Basically, you just slide them right in through the slot. This gray wire here with the gray connector is the one that goes up to the mirror switch. Let's take that and put it up and through that hole, all the way up high. Now we'll continue on. As we bring this over, I'm going to take the other three connectors, the blue, gray, and green, and slide them up through the hole where the window switches need to be. Now as I bring this over closer to the door, I want you to pay attention to the area where my fingers are here. There's a lip. Now that lip actually needs to sit up and over the lip that's on the door right here. While we're talking about this area up along here, you also have your door lock. It's going to be easiest to put your door panel on with the lock in the upright position or unlocked position. We're going to have to line that up with the corresponding hole on the door panel. I'll bring it up nice and high, line up that door lock, slide it through the hole. As I start bringing it down, I'm pressing this towards the door and I'm trying to line up the lip with the top lip of the door. Now, once you have that lined up, we're going to continue on by trying to take a peek inside in between the door panel and the door itself. You want to find all those push pins and make sure they line up with the corresponding holes on the door. Once you feel as though you have them lined up, go ahead and press this right in so it's bottomed out against the door itself. Double check all the way around. If it feels like it's lifted away, more than likely one of those pins isn't lined up properly. You want to make sure you fix that. Just feels fine. Let's continue on with the mirror switch. Have a look at the back side. You can see that you have this area that protrudes out a little bit. Looking at the wiring itself, you'll find the area that slides right into it. Line it up, latch it in. Listen for a click. I always give things a tug. Yep, that feels good. Now we're just going to go ahead and slide this in. There's 2 locking tabs, one along this area that goes along the side over here, and one up along the top. When I press, I always press along the base and never on the switch itself. Why break it? Make sure it feels as though it's secure and it's not going to move around inside that door panel on you. Now it's time to reattach the window switch here. Now we're going to take this and we're going to start putting it in. You can see that I have a couple push tabs here that need to line up with their corresponding holes on the door itself. Make sure that's nice and secure. Now we can put this on here. Looking at the back, you can see that you have some locking tabs. Those are just going to slide right in behind the panel as you press it in. We'll take this, we're going to pull on that inside door handle. Slide it right on through that square hole. We'll get it lined up with the area that it needs to be in and gently press it in. Let's put in our 2 mounting screws along here. Use my 7mm to get those in there. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now we'll use our 5.5mm to put in our lower mounting bolts. Time for our last plastic panel here. Looking at the back, you can find the locking tabs and the alignment tabs. Make sure everything lines up and carefully press it in.